After deleting Terror Sandwich from the timeline, the channel's members have voted for exterminating the King of the Chimera Ants next. A quick reminder of the rules before we start, followed by the amendments we'll have to make in order for this to be a viable hypothetical. So, the regular rules are: 1. I am not using a specific character, but an imagined challenger who primarily scales with an end proficiency level of the specific character he is going up against. 2. No assassinations. 3. Neither character has the initiative advantage, and both combatants can start with their Hatsu either prepped or initiated. 4. The challenger has perfect info on the character he's going up against, while vice versa is not the case. 5. Winning entails killing or permanently incapacitating the opponent. 6. Escape is not an option for either character. 7. I may resort to imagined but very much possible Hatsu concepts if I really have to in order to properly counter a character. And 8. I can only use specialization-based Hatsu against specialists. Now for the amendments. First, as you can see, I usually don't even go out of my way to establish that these are meant to be one-on-one scenarios, because I think it's plainly obvious. But here I do have to mention it so that I can say it doesn't apply. We're going by the Fate series principle of establishing rules so you're fully aware of just how hard we're breaking them. While I do have an idea as to what ability, if scaled up, could counter MERUEM in a 1v1, I'll also outline my ideal 3-man team for exterminating the Ant King, since I'm much more confident in their chances of success. I'll also outline a 2v1 variant which is barely functional but worth at least a quick mention. Secondly, I won't bother evoking the imagined challenger this time around, since when I wrote the script around it, things got real confusing real fast. The problem stems from the fact that our imagined challenger is supposed to scale primarily with an end proficiency level of the opponent, which also includes their general power level. But the dizzying heights of MERUEM's Nen Genius, aura output, and physical stats are practically, though potentially not literally, far beyond what any human can hope to reach. So, instead of using 2 or 3 imagined challengers and wrecking my brain trying to balance out their Nen proficiency and power so that the hypothetical doesn't feel like a cop-out, I'll just use established characters and only scale up the poor soul taking MERUEM on in a proper 1v1. While I outline everything, feel free to try to guess either my scaled up 1v1 pick or the non-scaled up 3-man squad I think has the most optimal synergy for taking down MERUEM. To give you a few clues for those 3. The first is a world-class Nen user, the second is slightly below Zodiac level, and the third is a relative scrub considering his allies and particularly opponent. I'll also say that the first pick is very obvious, while the second and third share a category. Oh, and of course, I'm pitting them against pre-Rose MERUEM, since post-Rose MERUEM is virtually unbeatable in any kind of martial contest. With the core rules and their revisions established, let's get into it. The King of the Chimera Ants needs a little introduction, I believe. So let's quickly go over his physical stats and skill set. In terms of speed, strength, durability, agility, intelligence, and stamina, MERUEM is in a league of his own. He is fast and agile enough to exchange over 1,000 blows with Neteros 100 type Guanyin Bodhisattva in under a minute. He is strong enough to rip a world-class enhancer's extremities off in a single strike, durable enough to withstand thousands upon thousands of the Bodhisattva strikes, and then tank a point-blank emission-based attack, which is easily the second or third most powerful attack seen in the series in terms of pure destructive power, and intelligent enough to run hundreds upon hundreds of tactical simulations in his mind in order to ascertain the most optimal maneuver for disrupting his opponent's rhythm and push through their defenses. In terms of raw physical and mental stats, MERUEM truly is king. Seriously, in order to overpower him, you need the strength on par with, or in my opinion even greater than, Gonsan. In order to outspeed him, you need to be as fast as Netero's prayer motion. In order to mortally injure him, you'd need the destructive power of a tactical nuke. And in order to outthink him, you'd need a supercomputer at your disposal. All very reasonable and attainable stuff, as you can see. Let's now very quickly touch on his Hatsu, since frankly honestly, there's very little to really discuss. Meruem is an emitter with an ability unofficially named Aura Synthesis, which allows him to permanently absorb the aura of those he consumes, thus incorporating it into himself, which presumably boosts his total aura reserves, output, and physical stats. As far as we know, pre-Rose Meruem doesn't actually synthesize Hatsu, with his ability possibly evolving to include permanent Hatsu synthesis following his incorporation of Poof's and Yuppie's abilities, but even that's unclear. As such, as far as this hypothetical goes, Meruem is for the most part essentially just a stat monster with no Hatsu to speak of. So, what would Meruem's general strategy in a fight be? Blitzing! That's it. He speed blitzes the opponent, takes off their head in one go, eats the brain, gets a boost, speed blitzes anyone else in the vicinity, takes off their head, eats their brain, gets a boost, rinse, and repeat. I know I tend to babble a lot in this section, but I really got nothing for ya. In 99.99999% of cases, he really doesn't need anything more than that. There's essentially no ability that can't be countered via a fast enough speed blitz, no matter its nature. Speaking of, let's quickly take a look at what tactics wouldn't work. As alluded to, my standard counters of using a Nobunaga-style blitz-type enhancer to one-shot an opponent, decimating them with a Franklin-esque wall of emitted bullets, overwhelming them with a razor-like use of Nen Beasts, or disabling them with Hisoka's Ganji Bum, really, and I mean really, wouldn't work in this case. Meruem can tank, dodge, or overpower any such attack with relative ease, even if their power and effectiveness were boosted to Netero levels. Even abilities which I can't use, since they're confirmed to be specialization based like Fort Prince Terror Sandwiches, would be made impotent in the face of the king, since if he initiates immediately, Meruem takes off Terror's head before the prince can even blink, let alone close his eyes and enter Zetsu. Terror wanted to get Zetsu activation to under a second, and a second to Meruem is enough for him to do a few victory laps around Terror before one-shotting him. Hell, even if Meruem didn't blitz him from the start, a human in Zetsu anywhere close to Meruem would crumble and fall apart far worse than Nov did when he came in proximity of Poof's end. Oh, and of course, as an emitter, Meruem could just send a pulse of his aura all around him and kill any person in Zetsu in an instant. Sorry, I like to take the chance to crap on Terror whenever I can. Moving on. Now, an emission-based damage transfer ability like Terrabellum's Sweet Home could potentially work, but it would require of him to keep contact with Meruem while the damage transfer was happening, which, yeah, isn't really happening due to Meruem's physical stats. Also, depending on how the damage transfer works, damage capable of killing a boosted Terrabellum would almost certainly not be enough to kill Meruem, depending on whether or not their ability is accounted for or if an injury is transferred as is, ignoring potential differences in durability. Damage transfer abilities absolutely have potential in the right combination and under the right circumstances, particularly since we know that Meruem is quite capable of damaging himself. But that's not what I've opted for, so I won't expand on it anymore. As you can see, any ability that relies on any kind of, endurable physical damage, has prolonged activation conditions, or requires of an opponent to fall into a trap or make a mistake, are all but useless against both physical and cognitive prowess of the Chimera Ant King. Furthermore, in order to even stand a chance of winning this fight, our combatant/combatants will need to have Hatsu capable of ending Meruem in a single instance, or else risk the Chimera Ant King coming up with a counter strategy by identifying and disrupting their rhythm, only to massacre them in an instant. Alright, so how about a Hex ability like Second Prince Camilla's Cat's Name? This is a post-mortem Nen empowered ability that instantaneously kills the person who landed the killing blow on the prince and transfers their life essence to her so as to bring Camilla back to life. If Meruem is going for one-hit kills, this would make sense, wouldn't it? Not even. A requirement for initiating the ability is for Camilla to be fatally wounded while in a state of Zetsu, seemingly needing to approach the potential target of her ability while already in it, and being unable to surprise them by suddenly entering Zetsu before a potentially lethal hit. As such, even Moose, one of First Prince Benjamin's soldiers, was immediately suspicious upon seeing Camilla in Zetsu, correctly surmising that she indeed had some kind of counteractive ability, but chose to go for the kill, since the value of confirming it would be indispensable to Benjamin. If Moose, no offense, was able to realize that killing someone willingly entering Zetsu was a bad call, I think the supercomputer that is Meruem would be capable of coming to a similar conclusion. Plus, quite frankly, I'm confident that Meruem would be able to either dodge or overpower the Nen Beast and thus avoid getting, smoothified. Oh wow, that's a real word. Huh. However, if we scaled up Camilla's Nen Mastery to Netero levels, as well as significantly loosened the conditions for her ability's activation, and buffed the stats of the Nen Beast, we could actually make it work. First, she'd need the skill to close her aura nodes and enter Zetsu at the same speed Netero completes his prayer motion. Then we make it so that she can take an opponent by surprise by closing her aura nodes mere moments before impact. And finally, we boost the cat to Bodhisattva levels of speed and power. With this, the second prince actually stands an excellent chance of dethroning the king. My one potential qualm with locking in a Netero level Camilla as my pick is the fact that we do not know her category, and her ability heavily skews the chances towards her being a specialist in my eyes. However, until it's confirmed either way, if ever there was anyone capable of taking down the Chimera Ant King in a 1v1, it's the possibly fundamentally impossible version of Camilla I just outlined. Let's now go over my nearly surefire 3-man squad for eliminating the single biggest threat to the known world since the previous Dark Continent expedition. My first and by far most powerful squad member is none other than, as you might have guessed, Isaac freaking Netero. Now, while he was probably easy enough to guess, his role in this team may be a bit surprising. Netero's sole purpose in this 1 or 2 second bout is solely to keep Meruem away from the two characters actually capable of ending him. I actually initially intended to just use the two mystery characters, but again scaled up to Netero's levels of Nen Mastery, only to realize halfway through that even with that boost, I still couldn't convince myself that Meruem wouldn't just blitz them. Note that Meruem stated he was much faster than Netero in all other aspects, but for his prayer motion, which just about outpaced the king at his fastest. Meaning that being a Netero level combatant isn't worth much, unless your ability relies on a condition the speed of which can be modulated with enough practice, such as Netero's aforementioned prayer motion or Camilla's Zetsu activation. As such, Netero's there to serve as a glorified fly swatter, basically. The first of the two remaining characters I'm so annoyingly not naming, and the second most powerful one of the trio is none other than Nov. I've mentioned this a few times by now, but as far as we know, Nov's Scream entirely ignores an opponent's physical durability, making it the perfect weapon for dealing with a nigh physically invulnerable Meruem. Finally, the definitively weakest member of the strike team is none other than Goreinu. Yup, the Greed Island dodgeball match Goreinu. In a similarly hacksy, though much less directly pernicious way to Nov's Scream, Goreinu's ability allows him to create two Goreinus, named the Alabaster and Obsidian Sages respectively. While the Alabaster Sage is capable of switching places with Goreinu, the actually important for us, Obsidian Sage, is capable of switching positions with anyone else who isn't Goreinu, with essentially no conditions as far as we know. I'm certain that there must be set conditions, such as the number of times and maximum range at which the swap can occur, but none have thus far been explicitly confirmed. So as far as I'm concerned, and as much as I'm willing to give him, Goreinu is able to swap an opponent with his Obsidian Sage at least once per its manifestation, and at no farther than a distance of a dozen or so meters. That's already more than we need. Here's the three-way combo. Netero is there to keep off Meruem from instantly one-shotting the other two, and may be required to hold him in place for the half second or so needed for the two to execute their combo. We're assuming this is a practiced maneuver, of course. The combo in question entails Nov enveloping the Obsidian Sage in Scream, making certain to envelop the Nen Beast from the bottom up. As it sank halfway down into the portal between Nov's hands, Goreinu would swap the Sage for Meruem, while Nov would simultaneously close the portal, thereby forcefully sending Meruem's lower half away to Nov's Ant Kill Room, effectively giving him the Namek Frieza treatment by horizontally bisecting him. The reason this is the best way to do it is because it wouldn't allow Meruem any recourse for escape. Since the Obsidian Sage would be halfway through the portal at the time the swap took place, Meruem would have nothing to stand on and would be unable to potentially escape since he'd have nothing to grab onto or leverage. The king would find himself in checkmate. Also, I'm giving Nov a morale boost considering he'll be fighting alongside Isaac freaking Netero, so I'm banking on him not freezing up when faced with Meruem's kingly aura and successfully executing the maneuver. This is why I said the combo was nearly surefire. Finally, to very quickly go over the 2v1 combo since I find it supremely comical. There is a way for just Netero and Nov to take Meruem out. We know that Meruem isn't really capable of changing his trajectory mid-air due to the force of Netero's slaps and the fact that he can't fly, and relied on the pillars to quickly change his angle of attack. So, if Nov could open up a wider portal, Netero could just slap Meruem straight into it. As I said, killing or permanently incapacitating the opponent are both valid win cons, and one of Nov's many rooms could simply be Meruem's extraplanar prison for as long as Nov is alive, which should be enough for Meruem to die of a lack of nutrients. Just as long as he isn't teleported in the room with all the Chimera Ant corpses, which would essentially be a buffet for him. A nasty one, but a buffet nonetheless. This is a rather unrealistic combo, and I'm mentioning it more as a comical rather than a real suggestion, since A. Meruem's aforementioned tail could get in the way of him falling into the portal, and B. we don't know if Nov's fourth dimensional mansion is indestructible, meaning that Meruem could either break through and enter real space, or break a hole through each wall and then just blitz Nov as soon as he dared to use the ability again and escape that way. It's a possible but improbable way to go about it. And those were some of my ideas for exterminating the king of the Chimera Ants. There was one more potential route to go with, but I decided to save that for when I eventually make the How to Counter Netero video. What did you guys think? Do you have any solo or team matchups optimal for countering Meruem's insane stats? If so, feel more than free to share them down below. As usual, I'd very much like to thank the thinkers and overthinkers for going the extra mile in supporting the channel. As always, thank you very much for watching, your feedback is always appreciated, subscribe if you'd like more content like this, and I'll see you in the next one.